Hi everyone, in this video we'll do a comparison between two Linux OS optimized for servers. They both are hypervisor OS, so you can manage containers or virtual machines inside this kind of operating system. And the main reason to use this kind of Linux operating system is to have fast snapshots, backups, and many other advanced features. So these are the operating system. We have TrueNAS Scale, which is a relatively new project, and this is 2202. And then we have Proxmox, which is 7.2, and currently it is 7.3. But this Proxmox release is unofficial, so it runs on a Raspberry Pi, but the features are quite the same of the original Proxmox. Okay, so let's start with a demo just to see the power of this kind of operating system. We have a website which is just a normal website with a database, and let's imagine that a ransomware attack our server. So let's try ransomware. Okay, this could be a ransomware or a software error, and as you can see, we wrote another message in our database. So what we can do with this kind of operating system is to roll back to the previous backup, or snapshot is better. So if I go to storage, I already had the setup for this kind of storage. So I go here, these are the storage I have, and this is the container, which, not container, it's the dataset, which contains the data of this web application. So I can go to snapshots, and I can go back in time to the previous release of the software. So these are the latest snapshots, which are very fast to do, and you can also use automatization to create this one. So I roll back to this one. So roll back, and you can also do these things or normal Linux system, but with this kind of operating system you have this web UI to do it. So roll back. Okay, now I reload the page. Try again. Okay, it's back the container, and as you can see, I have the previous message. So let's start with the first test, which is the where can you effectively install this kind of operating system. Proxmox is available for x86 64 bits, and also for Raspberry Pi, but it isn't official. So the project is this one, and it's very cool that you can run this kind of operating system also on these small computers, but it's unofficial. So I just use this release because I have a normal computer and a ARM computer. So don't do it in production. Okay, so we don't have the ARM version for TrueNAS. The second thing that is quite important, at least for me, is that Proxmox supports both VMs and containers, but these containers aren't Docker containers, are just LXC containers. So you have to do something like a Docker file to apply the installation in these containers. But you can create a virtual machine or another LXC container and install Docker inside this LXC container. I don't think this is a very nice way to manage Docker. At least I prefer an operating system which implements Docker as the first-class container, and TrueNAS does it. So if you go to Applications, you can launch a Docker image. Behind the scene, it uses Kubernetes to implement this feature. But as you can see, I have an official container inside TrueNAS, and this is a Docker image which isn't supported by TrueNAS. TrueNAS implements recipes for a lot of images, but not with Docker, with the Kubernetes way. But you also can specify here the Docker Hub container and also other features that you expect from Docker. So you have port forwarding. So as you can see, my application runs on 52300 port, and you can see that mapping here. So this is the external port mapping. So you have something like a first-class Docker implementation. And this is also the implementation for the persistence. So you can map a ZFS dataset like this one, OCT, to a path internal the container in this and this is the path of the container where it expects to save the data. And yeah, it's a little bit different from a Docker Compose file, but it implements what you need. You can also add other kind of applications in TrueNAS, and if you go to application, here we have the installed application, then we have the available applications, and as you can see, the blue ones are the official supported applications in TrueNAS, but you can also add a third-party repository, and it is full of other applications. And if the application you need isn't available in this repository, you can also use another way, which is the Docker Compose from TrueCharts stable repository. Yeah, you have many options to install the application on TrueNAS, while in Proxmox you have more VM and container view. So this thing is managed in a different way. Okay, another interesting thing is the monitoring. So in Proxmox, you can pick the server of the cluster, and you can also click, it is doing a backup now, okay, and you can also click on the image to see the memory usage per container or per virtual machine. And as you can see here, this is per container stats, and then you have per computer stat. I didn't find a similar way in TrueNAS. Leave me in the comment if you found a way to monitor the resources of the application in TrueNAS. You just have under dashboard, you have the system information. This is the CPU usage, but it's per computer, not per application. And this is the RAM usage, and this is the pool usage. You can also click here in disk reports to have a more detailed view of what is going on. And yeah, you can also monitor disk temperature and other things. Okay, these are the two hard disks temperature, and you can also change the hard disk here if it implements the feature. And also from here you can switch to another target like memory. So you have physical memory utilization and swap utilization. And you can also do zoom out to have a more wide view, and which when the computer is in standby, you don't have the stats anymore, so it's correct. So the other feature which could be interesting for some kind of people, honestly I don't care much about the mobile applications, but Proxmox has implemented a native Android application, Proxmox Virtual Environment Mobile, and you can find it in the Play Store. But it's a completely different application from the old web UI, so it isn't guaranteed that all the feature of the desktop application you can find that in the mobile application. While with TrueNAS, the website is responsive, so as you can see, the same web UI can be used on mobile phones, so it's very cool. Okay. Other topic is the automatic snapshots and backups, and you can do it in TrueNAS in here you can find the storage pools, and if you want to backup this pool automatically, you can go to data protection, and as you can see here you can do recurrent tasks like periodic snapshot and or rsync to other places, and it's still loading because I'm recording and my computer isn't very powerful. So here we have a periodic snapshot task, and here you can specify your cron job, which is optimized for this kind of task. So you can pick the dataset that you want to do the snapshots, and this is the OCT snapshot, OCT dataset. You can pick here the lifetime, so how many days you want to keep this kind of snapshots, and this is the naming for your automatic snapshots. You can also do manual snapshots, and you can do it when you want, so hourly, daily, weekly, etc., or custom. And you have a very complete UI for this task. But in Proxmox it's a little bit different. So if you want to do the backup of this container, you have to go in here, backup, and you can set it up from here. But this is a backup, so it's quite slow and also bigger than the snapshot. And as far as I know, there isn't a way to do automatically snapshots from here. There is a command that you can type in the shell, but I didn't find the support for snapshots in this kind of container. Even if you can do snapshots, it's here. But Proxmox has been developed since many years before TrueNAS Scale. So if you want stability, probably Proxmox is still the best choice. Okay, other feature is that Proxmox implements high availability. So another feature that maybe isn't useful for everybody, but is that Proxmox implements high availability. So you can have multiple computers which can share resources and move containers and virtual machines from one to another one directly from the web UI. And I'm not sure it is implemented also in TrueNAS. And another different thing is that you can access in both operating system to the system shell. So if you right click here, shell, you are inside the Proxmox operating system, and here we have Linux 5.15 kernel, and you can also check which packages are available. So here, as you can see, the real operating system behind the scene is Debian Bullseye, and you can also do apt update command, but usually you shouldn't change this kind of operating system, and this behavior is different in Proxmox, in TrueNAS. You can have a similar view here under System, Settings, Shell, and here you can type also other commands. We have an older kernel in TrueNAS stable, and it's 5.10 Linux kernel, but you can't use apt. As you can see, permission denied even if I'm root inside this operating system. So both operating systems have similar packages, but are used differently. And as you can see, we have Bullseye, so also TrueNAS Scale is based on Debian Linux. So let's do an overview of Proxmox. We have a data center and we have all the computers in our cluster, and I have just a computer. These blocks are virtual machines or containers, and when you are in, you can see the resources, network configuration, DNS, backups, firewall, and snapshots. These are the basic features of Proxmox. And in this part, you can see the logs. So this is a backup, automatic backup. And under status, you see that it took 2 minutes and 46 seconds. And let's do a similar overview of the operating system in TrueNAS. Here we have the dashboard with all the information, CPU, RAM, and network consumption, and storage consumption. And here we have the alerts, so when something bad happens, usually. And you also have the log of the jobs that you could run, and under history you see all the jobs, active jobs, and failed jobs. And you can also filter the job for some information. So if you click view, you don't have much information about it, but that's it. So under storage, you have the pools, so you can automatically create other configurations, more advanced configuration. So if you want to create a mirrored pool or different kind of RAID configuration, this is the main pool, which can also be encrypted with ZFS encryption, and it supports encryption with a key file or with a passphrase. And this is not the main operating system, it is a pool for the data. Then under shares, we have the support for Windows Samba shares, Unix, NFS, iSCSI or WebDAV. Under data protection, you have ZFS maintenance like Scrub, AirSync synchronization, periodic snapshots, and also information about the status of your disks or replicas. This is network, so this is the Ethernet card, this is the Wi-Fi card, and the current local IP. Name servers and OpenVPN support for both client or server. Under credentials, you have the management for 2FA authentication and users. Virtualization is for virtual machines that I'm not using. Apps is where you can install the applications that are already supported by the operating system. And in Manage Catalog, you have the official repository and also the TrueCharts repository, where it supports many more applications. And under Manage Docker Images, you can see all the Docker images that you installed in the application managed part. Reporting. Here you have CPU usage, CPU temperature, system load, and just for the full operating system, not for per application or per container. And then system settings, updates, boot, and shell, if you want to look under the cover. Another important topic for this kind of operating system is which file system to use. Proxmox has this nice table because not every file system supports snapshots, so this kind of picture of the current system. And backups are more useful to move in another disk, in another drive. But backups also takes much time than snapshots to be made. So the best file system currently to use is ZFS. Even if it isn't Linux native, you need an external driver to implement it. But it implements snapshots and it is stable. BTRFS is another option, but it's in tech preview currently in Proxmox. And other file systems are for other kind of use cases. You could also use LVM Thin, but it can't be used for every kind of data. So I think the best choice for both operating systems is to use ZFS file system. Conclusion, both operating system, Proxmox or TrueNAS Scale, are fantastic in my opinion, but sometimes the automation is cool, but if you don't understand what happens behind the scene, it can be difficult to understand what is happening in the system. So if you don't want to use so much RAM for this kind of operating system, and I'm talking to TrueNAS Scale, which recommends 8 GB of RAM minimum. It also works with 2 GB of RAM, but it's slow, and this is mainly for ZFS requirements. You can also do it manually, but I think it's nice that you have operating system which manage so easily backups and snapshots. And you can also use this operating system for many kind of situations, while if you code your script by yourself, you also have to maintain that kind of configuration, even if it is more optimized, and probably it also takes less RAM to use. That's all. I hope you found this video useful. If it was so, you can leave me a thumbs up and see you in another video. Bye.